As spring unfolds across Canada, communities from coast to coast mark Victoria Day, a long-standing national holiday with deep historical roots. Originally established to honor Queen Victoria's birthday, this day has evolved into more than just a celebration of the monarchy. For many, it symbolizes the beginning of summer, a moment for gathering with family and friends, and a time to reflect on Canada's heritage and values. Joining us to share their perspective is Brendan Caldwell, director at Caldwell Securities Ltd. As we dive into the significance of Victoria Day, what it means personally and nationally, and how Canadians choose to celebrate this important day. Brendan, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Theresa. Happy Victoria Day to you.
Now, what is the significance of Victoria Day?
Well, the significance, the historical background you gave, in that she was the Queen when we got responsible government here in Canada, that is to say, government that was responsible to the people, not to the British Parliament. It's what the Americans took up arms to get a couple of generations before, but in the 1840s, we got it quite peacefully, so that from that point on, Canada effectively ruled itself in most areas. Now, there were several provinces, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Canada East, Canada West, but it was the people actually had representation. So she was the Queen when that happened. She was also the Queen when, post the American Civil War, we joined as a country. She was the one that decreed that Ottawa would be our capital. And she was the one that was Victoria was the one who was Queen during the first 35 years or so of our nationhood. So it was really during her reign that the important ground-laying events in our history that brought us from a pure colony to an independent country happened under her watch.
Now, as I mentioned previously, a lot of people view this holiday as the start of summer, a time to spend time with family and friends. But what does this holiday mean to you?
Well, I think it is just that. It's the first long weekend of the Canadian summer, eh? It's where people celebrate. It's as big a celebration, at least in my part of the world, my part of the country, as Canada Day, with fireworks, and it's nice that it always falls on a Monday. The official day is the 24th of May, but if that happens to be a Monday, great. If not, it's the first Monday before the 25th. So it is a beautiful way to kick off, while putting a little gentle nod to how we got here in the first place.
Now, unity, inclusivity, diversity, and resilience are all words that go along with this holiday. Do you feel Canada well portrays these kind of ideals?
I think Canada does a spectacular job of portraying those ideals. I don't know if everybody would agree that they go along with the holiday, in as much as they see the crown or the monarchy as a symbol of colonies and colonialization. And I don't intend to speak on behalf of Indigenous people of Canada, but the crown is what actually guarantees them the rights that they have. And while they're in contrast to the experience of Native North Americans south of the border has been a different one. So the crown is a symbol of Canadian unity. It's also a very different situation than we have south of the border, where the head of state and the head of government are the same person, which means that if your head of state or head of government is a problem, it's very, very difficult to replace them without a constitutional crisis. We saw that with Nixon. We almost saw that with Clinton. It's a really messy business. Whereas having a head of state, the monarch, Charles III, as the king, and having the head of government being separate people, means that if when the Queen passed away, it was tragic and people were sad. After all these years, most Canadians, she's the only monarch they ever knew. But it didn't actually affect the running of government. Should a prime minister need to be replaced, not that we've had that experience recently, it's not actually a constitutional issue to move on. So having a separation of powers, head of government, head of state, is worth celebrating in the crown, because one of the things that does make us distinctive and it actually makes our government run much more smoothly, especially in times where, well, it averts crises.
And to stay on the monarch, King Charles III, who is the great, great, great grandchild of Queen Victoria, he's going to be opening Parliament on May 27th. Do you believe that this is the right step to be taking with Trump right now and everything that's going on?
Oh, I think so. I think so. We want to talk about what's distinctly Canadian, and what I just spoke about was the fact that we do have a head of state and a head of government who are different. So to have our actual head of state come and open Parliament, I think it's a very good thing. I do think that, as I mentioned earlier, the Indigenous Canadians do look to the Crown as their source of security because it's their contract, their treaties are with the Crown. Sometimes the Crown in Canada after it was a nation, but sometimes in many cases, the Crown predates Canada and the treaties they have predate Canada. So having the Crown there, I think, is a nod to not just the British tradition, but the Indigenous tradition in our country. And believe it or not, actually the French Canadian, and I get hate mail for this, I'm sure, but when the British took over Quebec, whether it was through treaties or the Battle of Quebec, the French people kept their language, their religion, and their legal system, and they still use the civil code in Quebec to this day. And it was seen as one of the intolerable acts when the Americans had their rebellion a few years later, that French Catholics had more rights than American Protestants. So it was really the Crown that helped preserve the French tradition in Quebec, far more than would have been the case had there been an actual American takeover. And Americans have invaded Quebec to no success, both in 1775 and during the War of 1812. So I think the fact that Quebec as part of Canada has far more rights, freedoms, and abilities than it would as part of America is probably worth remembering.
Now, you mentioned fireworks earlier, and as we celebrate Victoria Day, I have to ask, are there any traditions that you partake in over this celebratory weekend?
I do enjoy fireworks. They're so joyful, and for many years I used to live across from the old Lieutenant Governor's residence, which is in Chorley Park in Rosedale in Toronto. There hasn't been a residence there since, well, my lifetime, but the park there was a wonderful place to shoot off fireworks. I think they've made it illegal now, but for many years, my kids and I would go down there even after we moved away from that part of the city.
Well, Brendan, thank you so much and happy Victoria Day.
Happy Victoria Day, Theresa.